Please welcome Tom Zender.
Thank you. Hi. My name is Tom, and I'm a recovering CEO. And that's the truth. My word for the day, every day of my life is gratitude, and I'm really grateful to be here with you this morning. To all of you who opened the door, for those of you who are here, for dear Adrian for inviting me to be here this morning and to express to you the restless spirit within about spirituality in our workplaces, and businesses. I know we're going to have some music in a little while, so I'd like to make a couple of requests. One by Bachman Turner Overdrive, Taking Care of Business, and now I know you're in my age group. And secondly, Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 would be another good choice. I know that most of you know who Warren Buffett is, one of the world's wealthiest people. Well, he was recently in Orange County, and he drove up in front of one of our banks and walked in, faced a teller, and said, "I need to borrow $5,000. Of course, the teller knew who this was, but didn't react in any particular way, stayed neutral, and said, "What will you be using the money for?" And Buffett said, "I have to go to Europe for 3 weeks." And the teller said, "Well, what will you be using for collateral?" And Buffett pointed to his car out on the curb. So the deal was transacted. The teller handed the $5,000 to Buffett, and Buffett walked out. And just before he hit the door, he turned around and looked at the teller, and he said, "Would it be okay if I park my car in the customer parking lot while I'm gone?" The teller said, "Well, sure, you're a customer." So 3 weeks later, Buffett comes back, walks in, same teller, and said, "How much do I owe you?" And again, the teller, knowing exactly who this man is, said, "Well, you owe me $5,000 for the principal and $15.47 interest." So Buffett wrote the check for the total amount, handed it to the teller, and began to walk out, and the teller couldn't stand it anymore and said, "Mr. Buffett, would you mind telling me why someone of your means would come into this bank and borrow $5,000 for 3 weeks?" Buffett said, "Sure. Where else can I park my car in Orange County for 3 weeks for $15.47? Now that, of course, is a story, a joke. What is not a story and a joke is I know Buffett's cousin George, who happens to live in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And what George told me was when they were little kids, the family would gather, and George's mother, Warren's aunt, would read some spiritual material to the family, including a publication called The Daily Word. And in The Daily Word and other similar publications, there are often pages or words about prosperity, abundance, wealth, affluence, you name it. I would like to believe that somewhere in his childhood, maybe, Warren Buffett heard something that altered his life. Not only about the accumulation of his wealth, but also the distribution of it. Because look what this man is doing, along with Bill Gates and 50 plus others. They are giving 50% or more of their wealth to global humanitarian causes. And I would suggest that that is just one great example of spirituality in workplaces, and business happening. How did this happen? Most of us have a book in mind. The dilemma, of course, is getting it out. The topic, being timely, for me, began to appear in around 1998. My life was upside down professionally and personally. I was grappling for life, and a couple of things began to happen. I got involved in a local unity community, and at about the same point in time, in 1998, some of you may remember a Business Week cover article about spirituality in the workplace. And I read the article and it kind of grabbed me. Another thing that happened was a local, very successful executive by the name of Sam Yao had sold National Learning Corporation, I believe, to Sylvan Learning. And Sam gave a talk at the Forum for Corporate Directors where I was active. And that talk was essentially about spirituality in the workplace, but he didn't use those words. So that was beginning to happen. And then in the year 2000, I heard a lecture, a talk, a workshop by a guy by the name of Joel Fotinos, who happens to be then and now the senior editor of the Mind, Body, Spirit division of Penguin Putnam Publishing. He was talking about how do you write a book about spirituality. And I couldn't take notes fast enough. And at some point in my note-taking, I received what I would call a download, and the title of this book came spilling out onto my notes. But it took a while to get the book out. I had my business career, then I went off to run the Unity organization for 6 years, and that was the integration of spirituality and business for me. And so when I moved back to Orange County 3.5 years ago, the book began to spill out, and that's how it happened. I'll read the fine print. It's a little difficult to read. Except for the people, the hours, the work, the stress, and the pay, this is the best job I've ever had. And that is pretty much an underscoring of much of the state of our work world. A couple of historical thoughts, one being, we're pretty familiar with the idea of the separation of church and state, alias religion and state. But nobody said that we had to separate spirituality from state. Nobody said that the creation of the United States of America was done without a spiritual underpinning. In fact, a number of books have been written that suggest that the founding people of this country were metaphysicians. Some additional books suggest that many of them were also mystics or expressing mysticism into the foundation of this country. And that's why we'll see the word God, which is just one name among millions of names for that which is greater than ourselves, in the documents that prescribe this country. But also no one has said that spirituality cannot be in the workplace. We've pretty much said that religion in the workplace is generally not a good idea. But spirituality can be. And within the last decade, we started to see several shifts that tell us that this is so. The Business Week article was one. Another example was that I've noted that Deepak Chopra periodically lectures at the Kellogg School of Business at Northwestern University in Chicago. Another telling indicator is he just published a new book called The Soul of Leadership. Another indicator was when I wrote the book, I thought that a publisher would be somebody like Hay House, a mind, body, spirit, etc. publisher. So when my literary agent was shopping the manuscript, she did give it to a division of John Wiley & Sons up in the Bay Area called Jossie Bass. Jossie Bass is the mind, body, spirit publishing division of Wiley. They turned it down. But the business books division of Wiley is the one who picked up my book. Why? Because I think they understand this trend that is happening about the rising consciousness of spirituality in business. A lot of people say to me, well, we should put more spirituality into business. Norman said it. We don't have to. It's already there, fully. And our work is to take the wrappers off, avail ourselves of our spiritual assets, and express them in our workplace. So within the last decade, there are many telling tales about the opening at this point in time for spirituality in business and our awareness of it and our willingness to express it. Who works? Well, often my audiences will talk in terms of people who work are people who are compensated to work. So it's those who are salaried, It's those who earn money from work. I would suggest there are many, many more. So, volunteers. Selfless service volunteers in nonprofit organizations and others work. They don't happen to be monetarily compensated for it. They're compensated, hopefully, in other ways. The military works. Good students work. Homemakers work. I know. I was a Mr. Mom for 15 years with 2 kids, carrying an executive-level job. Raising the kids was harder than the executive job, but I worked. I would suggest that retired people work in maintaining their lives. So the vast majority of people work in one way, shape, form, or another. And another aspect of this is that most of us spend most of our waking hours throughout our lives working in one shape, form, or another. So the idea of spirituality on the back burner, leave spirit in church, leave spirit at home, leave spirit there on weekends, evenings, fine. But come 8 o'clock Monday morning, many of us turn into different animals and we leave it behind us. I'm reminded of an earlier American Express ad about the card. What was it? Don't leave home without it? Can't. We can't get rid of spirit if we want to, always present, but we forget. So the economy, I ask people sometimes, what's the greatest power on earth? Well, it's the universe, it's the cosmos, it's the divine, it's God, or by whatever name you want to call it. Then I say, no, well, okay, fine, yes. How about in the human plane? Well, it's the federal government. Really? Yeah, it's Ben Bernanke's job. And I suggest that we're it. We are the economy, both as providers and as consumers. So the notion of spirituality tied to the economy is a very important consideration because we're creating it all the time. And so to the extent that we're aware of our spiritual nature being expressed into our work as workers, and I would suggest consumers, is a critical awareness. So why be concerned about this from an internal point of view? Well, number one, if I am aware of spirituality in my work and workplace, I become a better worker. The quality of my output is improved. And we'll spend some more time with this. I also become an attractor. I can express my inner nature, my developing inner nature, my spiritual nature, and without having to say anything about it, others tend to gravitate to that. And so in the workplace, I can be an influencer to those around me without having to say anything specific, or preach, or proselytize, or evangelize, or anything of that sort. But just by the nature of my presence, I become an influencer. A third reason is beyond the workplace, and those physically around me, I am influencing others by the very energy that I'm throwing off into the universe. It's the one flap of the butterfly wing that changes the entire universe. External, there are a couple of reasons to be aware of and to intentionally practice our spirituality in the workplace. One is organizational integrity. So the idea of my becoming internally more integrous, more honest, more open, more inclusive, more kind, more loving, more empathetic, more compassionate in my work helps create a different kind of an environment in my workplace. It rubs off. And the organization by nature will become more integrous in the process.